Hi,
Hi, how's it going?
good. I'm just playing some of your music from last year in the background.
Oh, awesome.
And yeah, so this is Fam Electric Ghost, and we interview indie artists from around the world. And we have and we talked to you last year when we were on SpareMin, and now we're on Anchor. And
hmm
we're happy to have you on this platform, and we're excited to talk to you again.
Oh, well, thank you so much. I'm excited to chat with you as well.
Yeah, it's really cool because I was following you, since the last time we chatted, and I saw that you were involved in that coffee music project, and maybe
Yeah, that
maybe
was so much fun.
yeah,
hmm
maybe you want to start there and tell everybody what you were doing, and that was like a really big deal. I know you did a collaboration as well since the last time we talked, so we can kind of take the floor and kind of focus
Yeah.
on what you want to talk about.
Oh, totally. I mean, I've just been I'm pretty much one of those people who just can't say no to stuff. So I just, if someone's like, hey, do you want to play this gig? I'm just like, yeah, of course. So I had this period of about like 3 weeks from like the end of September through mid-October where I was just playing nonstop. Just like I had a million different things. And like I'm still in the stage where not a lot of people show up because not a lot of people know who I am, but it's just so good to be playing all the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's great to be playing. I mean, that's what musicians like live for.
Yeah, no, of course. And that's what I mean. I have a show coming up on Friday, but things have slowed down a little bit since that sort of period of time, which was just crazy for me because I'm not used to doing that much in that small amount of time. And I had already had a bunch of shows booked during that time. And then I found out that we were accepted to compete in this coffee music project, which was a really, really, really cool thing that they do. So it's there is Project Waterfall is this charity that raises money for clean water in coffee growing communities.
hmm
And so essentially the Coffee Music Project started as basically like a fundraiser for Project Waterfall, and they do it through like the whatever company organizes the New York Coffee Festival every year, and they also do like the LA Coffee Festival and the London Coffee Festival. So there's this performance group called Seb Collective, and they're based in London. And so every year they do the Coffee Music Project London. So they do that for a few weeks where they have online submissions. Anyone who's like local enough to London or whatever would submit their music. And then if they like it, they're accepted to perform in the preliminary round. And then there's a final round after the preliminary round of all of the competitors from that city. So first they do it in London and they choose a winner, and then they move to New York and they choose a winner, and then they move to LA. So they're actually currently, I think, wrapping up in LA. And but when I submitted, it was like, oh, this looks like a cool thing. I love coffee. I love music. Who knows what's going to happen? And I submitted like toward the end of the summer. So then when we got in, I was like, oh man, I was really like overwhelmed because I'd already had all these other shows, but I was so happy to be doing it. Of course, so my friend Lena, who is my violinist, so the project that I'm involved in is called Ariahand, and that's basically because it's my music. I write a lot of songs and I can perform them by myself, but I love to have layers in my music. I'm huge on harmonies and like layers in general, and I can't do that stuff on my own. So I have a lot of very talented musical friends who do come in and out and perform with me. So that's why I generally go by Ariahand, and then when I play with my band or whomever, we will make up a name on the spot. Like the other day, I was playing with just my bassist out, and we were Ariah and the Time Orgy because that's what the night came up with. So but Lena and I had submitted a video together. We really love performing. We've done some so far sound shows together with her on violin and me on guitar, and both of us doing vocals, just because I'm obsessed with harmonies. And so and we sort of orchestrated my songs that way, and so when we submitted, it was submitted as both of us. So that's how we entered the competition. It was just the rendition of both of us. And what they do is they have a challenge because it is a songwriting competition. So you submit an original song, and then for the performance during the competition, you perform two original songs, and one has to be regarding a topic of their choosing, which is generally, I believe, just the city that it's located in. Like for us, they said like you have to perform a song about or that relates to New York City as a theme. So essentially, we had to perform two original songs. One of them had to relate to New York City as a theme. So if you don't already have a New York City song, you have to write one. So that's exactly what Lena and I did. We sat down during this crazy busy time where we were playing a ton of shows, and she was super busy and I was super busy, and we like squeezed time in there to try to write this song about New York City, which for me was like a really daunting task because I grew up in New York. I grew up here, and I mean, I don't know where, like that's like saying write about your whole life, because this is where the setting where every big thing that's ever happened to me has happened to me.
Yeah.
So, and then of course, when you go with New York song, it's like, I don't want to be cliche and just list places. And if I am going to list places, like what even are the most important like locations in New York to me personally? And so it was a really sort of a tough thing to sit down and just sort sift through all the different things that this could be, because it is such a broad topic, especially from people who live their whole lives in New York City.
Yeah, a lot of your songs were probably already about New York. Maybe they didn't name check it, but you were already in a New York kind of state of mind.
Well, yeah, New York State of mind, but I don't know if it related enough where I wouldn't feel confident twisting it around, and be like,
Yeah.
oh, so we ended up writing this song. And it was kind of funny because the idea of the song is basically just that in New York you can feel like everything is possible, and you could be super inspired 1 second, and then the next second you're just like realizing that you're just one of the crowd and you're like living your daily life. And so like the first line of the song that we ended up writing was walk out of a gig down at Arlene's feeling like fire, and squeeze onto the M early next morning. God, I'm so tired. So just the juxtaposition of like, feeling like a rock star late at night, and then in the morning, you're just like another person squeezing onto the train for your morning commute, just being exhausted. But the funny thing about that was that when we ended up playing the song for the first time at the preliminary rounds, it was on a weeknight, and it ended, and I was so tired and I felt amazing, and then I had to squeeze onto the M early next morning. So it was sort of like this catch-22, that's what we ended up writing about and performing, and the night that we performed it, it's just like the same thing happened. It just shows you how relevant it actually ended up being to my life and my
Yeah.
New York experience.
Yeah, living a life. But that's cool, that dichotomy of the two different, polar kind of positions that, you can, like have that cliche of like you can make it anywhere if you can make it in New York, but then it's also like you're in the millions of people, so
Yeah.
it's kind of hard to make it, though there's the
Oh, yeah.
possibility, and we can be
Exactly. It's that possibility. And
yeah,
sort of the theme of the song, we ended up calling the song Just Let Me Through. And that was, I mean, I have the feeling so much living in New York City when there's so many people. If you have to get through Midtown, I have this sort of sidewalk rage where it's just like, I need to get where I'm going. I can't be late. Just let me through. But
yeah.
we sort of use it on more of a I mean, obviously that's a very real New York feeling. But we sort of also took it to a metaphorical level of like, I'm around all of this greatness and I can be great. Just let me through, like to the top, there are all these barriers, but you're in the place. You just got to be let through to the,
Yeah,
anyway.
the light shine on that particular, star, and all these stars be, who's going to shine the brighter, you know.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's like it's amazing. Every time I've gone to New York, I felt really great because if you're an indie musician, like you live in low places like New Hampshire, people
Mm,
won't let you play original music. They want you to just play
wow.
Led
Yeah. They
Zeppelin
just
all the
want to
time.
hear covers. Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you go to New York and you're an indie musician, you can play original music, and that
Oh,
is
yeah.
like the real opportunity. I think you feel it because you're there all the time. But when you come from the outside, that is something that's a big draw to a lot of artists. The
Oh,
fact
yeah.
that you can do that's very enticing.
Right. No, of course. But I mean, unless that's only if you're booking a show as an original artist. And in that case, people expect you to get people out. So it ends up being this different kind of catch-22. It's like, yeah, I can play original music if there's already people who want to hear my original music.
Yeah.
So it's rare that you get events like where you get strangers listening to your new music in order for them to discover it.
Hmm.
Because most of the events that they want just a musician to be in the background for strangers, they covers.
Yeah.
um, and stuff that people recognize. So, I mean, it's a little funny in that way, but that's why I really love stuff like So Far Sounds. So Far Sounds is huge for independent artists and musicians. Are you familiar with what they do?
No, I've actually done some stuff where I've done like, 'cause I'm an electronic musician, so I've found places like Fat Baby and different places that will
Oh
let
yeah, yeah. Oh, Fat Baby's awesome.
they'll let like electronic bands come in, and you'll come in with
Yeah.
like 3 or 4 bands, and you can take over the club that night because they're looking for like that. And
Right, right,
so
right.
sometimes that genre we've been able to kind of piggyback
So cool.
on a
Yeah.
community type of thing, but yeah, but that's what. So you maybe tell me about more about what this particular.
Well, So Far Sounds is an organization. It's actually international. They have like So Far Sounds communities in every city, so pretty much every big city across the globe, like throughout Europe at least, and definitely throughout the States. And so the So Far Sounds New York, what it is that it you as someone who appreciates new music and original music and the arts, you can say, hey, I have a space, like you can use your home, or if you know of a space that is usable for something like a gathering or a performance, you can log on and you can make yourself a host, and then the people at So Far organize a show, and you can also log on and create an account as an audience member if you're someone who just wants to go to shows and discover new live music of original artists. So
Wow.
and if you're a musician, you can submit to them. And if they think you're good enough to showcase, then they will put you in these shows that they organize. And so essentially, you have all of these elements combining where, these really cool events are hosted in these intimate spaces where people are just silent. They come just to listen to new music and discover new artists.
Yeah,
And so the
that's
artists get
awesome.
exposure, and people get to just like have this great night of live music, and that's new.
Yeah, it's kind of like CBGB's Cafe Wah back in the day.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
When they like Hendrix was like found Cafe Wah, he was playing there. You go back in the day, like Talking Heads and all these great bands were playing
Yeah.
CBGBs. They were brand new and they were doing they weren't popular at the time they were there. They became popular, but
Yeah.
it's just the opportunity for artists. That's really great. When I hear things
Yeah.
like that.
And it's also really cool because I'm really used to, even when you play at big venues, there's so much noise all around, like people are chatting and they're doing their thing and they're drinking beers and so it's really cool, like the silence in this intimate setting. It's
So it's
almost
kind
a
of like
little
a
unnerving,
wow. That's
but
like a coffee shop because like
yeah,
if you go to a coffee shop or you're lucky enough to get like an NPR station, they like showcase you. Then you
yeah,
end up in a situation where it's totally quiet.
yep, totally.
And you get to like perform. You go to a coffee shop, and even there, I mean, a lot of the audiences are very fixated. When you go to these really small venues, they do want to hear what you're doing, and they're not like distracted, which
Right.
is cool. But if you're a band that kind of depends on that noise, then it's hard.
Yeah, totally. Absolutely.
Yeah, because some bands are maybe used to having so much noise that they're not used to the silences. And it's a little different when you have to deal with silences in the scene.
No,
You
I totally get that. Yeah.
Yeah,
We
that sounds awesome.
performances when there are silences. We're just like between songs and we're
Yeah, they can be awkward sometimes if you're not like the best front person, because then you're like, how do you entertain the crowd in between
yeah.
what you're
Well,
doing?
become my front personness has really just become myself being awkward, and sometimes it's weird. Sometimes I get people to laugh, and then that's sort of my favorite thing when that happens. It's like people are like, "Oh, I really like your music. Also, that was really funny," and then I'm like, "Yay!"
Yeah, well, it's cool when you get comfortable in your persona, because everybody, a lot of musicians have a stagecraft, and
Yeah.
they can kind of become more than what they are when they're on stage,
Right.
and
Yeah.
they get in that zone and they can be somebody that if you met them, you probably get 5 words out of them,
Right.
because they're very kind of like inward thinking. And like a lot of musicians I've met are very hard to get a lot out of them when they're not playing. But yeah, that's always been like the dichotomy that's so weird that you get these like very flamboyant personalities, but when you meet them, they're not at all what they appear to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of different.
Like very interesting, and I just try to be the most myself possible when I'm on stage. I don't know, it's just weird. I can't really put on a
Yeah, that kind of not putting on like a Robert Plant, the quintessential lead singer, like out there, some like a Freddie Mercury. He was just amazing, but
excited about this movie. I'm so
yeah, I mean, I think they got a really great actor to play him. There's some
oh
controversy
yeah,
on whether or not they captured his actual full life, but it's
right. Yeah, I think
another
I heard
another
about that.
another conversation. Because it's like it's like if you're going to capture somebody, maybe you should capture their whole being.
Yeah,
But some
but
people
do that too.
Yeah, it depends on what you're trying to do. If you're trying to get a certain audience that maybe doesn't want to see that,
Yeah,
and then you're trying to appeal to it, but if that's who the person was, it's a challenge. The director decided to focus on the music, so that's one thing. But somebody's life is kind of part of their music, so it's a level of you got to make a choice, and different people make choices when you make a film. You choose to do one thing or the other.
yeah, absolutely. I'm curious to see how they did orchestrate it, and then I feel like I'll come up with an opinion about.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of people who have opinions already because they have
Already, yeah, I've heard about.
there's a lot of camps that people get very opinionated, but
Of course.
yeah, but a lot of times like I'm into music for music's sake, but I'm also I understand artists that have a political bent. I listen to Dylan. Dylan had this whole phase when he was really like in the middle of the 60s, experience with civil rights and all these things.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, but then there was a period where he got out of that and just went inward into like Tangled Up in Blue was like, confessional songwriting. And so you can kind of go as an artist, you can be inward and kind of be confessional, or kind of talk about characters that are universal, or you can be political. There's all these different things you can do. And even in the same artist, you can do it. You don't have to be, you can find different voices.
Yeah, for sure.
So what, some of the projects you've been working on since we last talked, maybe you could go into
that. Well, yeah, I mean, so I'll wrap up about like with a sort of, well, you mentioned Dylan and all of his stuff, so I've already have like a million tangents in my brain right now because I mean I love Bob Dylan's political stuff, and I also have that struggle too because we live in clearly a very crazy time, and I do consider myself an activist, and I don't want to write about. I mean, I generally kind of tend to steer away from like just love songs and writing about like romance and love and relationships. And I mean, I do it occasionally when I feel really, really inspired by that. But I also think there's so many other things that are worth addressing, not just like externally, but also internally. Like I focus a lot on like the passage of time for some reason. But I also like think like how much can I really say about what's going on now, and how do I put that in a way that's going to make people feel something differently than they're already feeling, or I mean enhance that in a way that gives some sort of clarity or understanding or something. I don't know. You find yourself putting a lot of pressure on yourself as an artist to comment on everything that's going on, and especially when things are so tumultuous. Like,
yeah, you try to figure things out. A lot of what I like to do is, I listen to a lot of the classic songwriters, like I kind of went through, but I have a love of like old Victorian poetry, and
yes.
I'll read like Blake and Wordsworth and Tennyson, and I try to bring concepts from the Victorian age into the modern era in my music. I try to sneak it in. And what's cool is like a lot of people don't know. Like if Tennyson talks about little death, and people say, "What the heck's that?" And that's like a fancy word about talking about sexuality in a kind of masked Victorian way. And so then if you can use these kind of Victorian concepts, because they had they were kind of wild in their romanticism, but they would layer it and hide it. And I've always find that very interesting, and I like to try to do the same thing. And I use some of their terminology to kind of sneak it into the modern era, and it's not very common, and so it gives me a way to do something that's a little different.
Yeah.
And so that then you can make like statements about things, but you're kind of using poetic license to do it, so it's
Of
not
course.
direct.
Yeah.
I like being indirect in some ways to make people kind of work a little bit.
Totally. Totally. I love that. I mean, I feel like so many of my favorite bands do that where they're kind of like vague and not, you sort of make the sense of it that you want to make. I mean, I feel like the Shins, I love the Shins. I feel like they do that a lot
Yeah.
where they're clearly having something political, but it is sort of masked and like very metaphoric.
Yeah, that's always a good tool, because then people can't like attack you for being anti this or for that.
Then you're not really making a bold sort of statement either. But I guess it's really, it's up to the artist and what they're trying to express with their music.
Yeah, and then you get the more like, I sometimes love the punk aesthetic, and you could go into like Joe Strummer and say, hey, I'm gonna be real clear. And Joe Strummer was very clear when he was being very political in some of the Clash songs, and it's very clear which side he's on. He's leaning very left, and that's what he wanted to do. And people will go and say, well, I hate that, but or they love it. And it's like it's a one or the other when you kind of go with that. But sometimes like you get that kind of punk aesthetic, because punk music is so powerful and it's so direct. And if you really want to make a very clear statement, sometimes I'll go that way, because it's kind of a very, very honest way of doing it.
For sure.
So there's a lot of different things. I've been diving into the new wave. I've been really into Joy Division.
Cool.
The New Order, and kind of getting into that kind of feel. And it goes there. It goes from like Joy Division, New Order, like Depeche Mode keeps on, it evolved. If you get back to like the real purity of like Joy Division, I kept on listening to their first two records. And, as a synth player, getting into that New Order kind of early new wave kind of goth movement, there's a lot of really cool stuff that was done then. A lot of modern bands use it. I mean, Churches has pieces of that in what they do, but it's just cool to go back to the pure original innovators and try to learn from what they were doing.
Of course, because there's always something that you can take from it and make your own, and go off in a different direction with. That's really cool.
Yeah, that's where I've been living with since kind of let you leave. They allow you to be very open and go a lot of different directions.
That's great. That sounds really cool. That reminds me, I feel like I've been doing a lot of listening to also super old stuff, but more like soulful jazzy stuff, because that's more of like the retro vibe that I want to kind of take on a little bit now.
So what kind of artists were you getting into?
Like I've been listening to your Billie Holiday, your Ella.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great.
What's it called? Anyone Who Knows What Love Is.
Oh,
what am I last name?
Yeah, it escapes me right now, but I know who you're talking about, because I listen to like so much. Yeah, I understand the vibe you're going when you're going that way.
Yeah, it's very, just sort of like the classic crooners, and I love that stuff. I live for it, but I want to make it new and different. I mean, I guess that's sort of what Amy Winehouse was doing also, but maybe a little bit more different than that. I don't know.
She was trying to do that kind of raw, kind of, method acting as a musician.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And I feel like with my music, it's really hard to say what it is that I'm trying to do, because I generally just pick up my guitar and then whatever comes out is inspired by everything I've been listening to. But I don't know if it's really like a specific goal that I'm trying to attain. It just comes out,
Yeah, I think all musicians have this ability to kind of absorb their reference points. And when they're really good musicians, it just kind of naturally comes out. And if you try to, it's hard to explain. Like, when you're in that creative process, it's like people talk about the muse. Sometimes things just come out of the ether, and you could try to explain it after the fact, and be like Pete Townsend.
Well, I guess you can sort of put it together in your life. Like, oh yeah, I guess I've been listening to a lot of this lately, so that's probably where that came from.
Yeah, but you think guys like Bruce Springsteen and Pete Townsend get really detailed about what they did, right? But a lot of times you're like, are they really just making a backstory, and they just kind of just did it, And,
Right.
and you know, and not to criticize them, but like sometimes, like what I've noticed with a lot of musicians, they just, you know, after they have all that muscle memory and you have all these reference points, you've been listening, you've been playing, you just kind of have this natural ability to pull things together. And it kind of depends on the way you're feeling the day you write something, the way you go.
So
the way you go with it. And then afterwards, you can kind of rewrite your history and say you had this big plan. But a lot of times, I really think that it comes from just, you know, absorbing all that.
Feeling the moment, yeah. Absorbing and then letting it out in whatever way it comes out in the moment. Yeah, for sure. I'm gonna say, you mentioned Dylan also. I was gonna say that like every time Dylan comes up and his whole like civil rights movement stuff, I always mention that like I have this weird love-hate relationship with Bob Dylan. First of all, because we all know he can't sing. Yeah. Like everyone knows that. Yeah. We all, like, which is fine. That wasn't his thing. He was literary. His lyrics were genius. He was a literary. I'm not. He's more of a poet. He won the Nobel Literary Prize last year. So yeah, and that was well deserved. I mean, he's clearly, obviously, very talented. Definitely more of a poet. But the thing about him, as I call, it's like this figure that I've heard referred to as a manarchist, which is, for me, I always just love bringing this up because I think he's like a prime example of like someone who preaches about equality in his work and in his public, you know, life and persona, but in his actual life doesn't treat people that way. More specifically for Dylan, like it's women, where like the women in his life were treated terribly by him. But here he was like preaching about like equality and civil rights. And so I always think of Bob Dylan in this like weird love-hate way. Like, yes, he's a genius, but like he's also kind of a hypocrite. And I don't know. That's just always what I think.
Go back to the 60s, and you even go back to like the Beatles, and you look at like
so many of them
bands. You know, the men were all very chauvinistic and kind of sexist. It was the world.
And as a person who appreciates like all this old music, it's just hard to grapple with that. It's like
Well, yeah, you get some of the modern bands like REM that didn't have that kind of mindset, or like Pearl Jam, where Eddie Vedder had a totally different mindset than a typical rock star, from my understanding, unless that's a lie. But basically, a lot of it was that, you know, some of the more modern rock stars did kind of match the rhetoric, you know. But you know, or
at least they were better at covering it up if they didn't.
Maybe there's a big cover up, and Eddie Vedder wasn't as you know, progressive as he seems to be. But I think Michael Stipe appears to be, you know. But you know, if you look at REM, but in their position on a lot of things, but if you go back in the day, you know, Dylan does have that problem. And then even when you talk to Dylan, sometimes he kind of like he goes against his own work. Like there was a big biography of Scorsese did, and he was like not willing to accept.
One that you're talking about where all the different actors play him at different stages in his life?
No, there was this one where it actually was a documentary. It's a straight documentary. And they were asking him about his civil rights work, and when he was like mimicking Arlo and Woody Guthrie. And there was a point in his career where he was totally mimicking them. And and it was maybe super flattering the way he did it. And there was also this like after that period, and he went electric, he kind of rejected a lot of his civil rights like political music. And when they asked him about it, he wouldn't own up to it. He kind of, you know, he basically was kind of walking away from it. And then, you know, there was a lot of people in the 60s that really felt what he was doing and thought he was part of the movement. And then when you talk to him, like, he's like, oh, no, really didn't believe that. I was just writing a song. I'm like, okay.
Just trying to capitalize off of this movement.
Yeah, so that kind of fits into what your opinion of him. He wasn't as progressive or as much of a role model as he would appear to have been. Yeah.
Right.
But, you know, you always get disappointed by your heroes.
Always. Don't meet your heroes is what they say.
They're never what you thought they were.
But yeah, so now that I've finished my little tangent about Bob Dylan, I'm gonna wrap up about this New York Coffee Project. The only thing I want to say about it is that it was super fun, and we went from the preliminary rounds, what we played at pianos, and I had never played pianos before, so it was like a really great thing to get to do main stage at pianos. And we were brought into the final round. So there are 3 different nights of preliminary rounds, and then the 3 artists from each night get brought into the final rounds. So we were one of the 3 artists from our night, and we were really excited about it. And the finals took place at Mercury Lounge, which I had also never played Mercury Lounge, so I was very excited about that. And the thing about it is that everyone there, honestly, it should not have been a competition because everyone was so good and so sweet, like so nice, that it was just like, this is a showcase. Like we all just got along so well and we're so excited to hear each other's music, and everyone was really, really talented. So if anything, it just made us feel like, okay, we feel great that we are among all these people. Competition in general, like with music, because music is so subjective and stuff like that, it always just sort of unnerves me. And like, I don't really know how you're supposed to, everyone is different, and my sound might appeal to someone more than someone else's sound, or vice versa. Like that's, and especially when everyone does have such an obvious level of talent. So in this particular portion of the competition in the finals, literally every time a new act went up, my jaw just like dropped to the floor. I was like, whoa. So we did not place, but I will say that the people who did place weren't the people that I was expecting to be beaten by. And I think that just goes to show you just how subjective like music is in general. And how, we were just really happy and honored to be among all these people. And now I'm listening to them all the time, and hoping that, we can get on bills together in the future. It was just a great thing to do. And I'm really happy.
When you're around, peers that you're like, music has always been like the 60s ideal. And like you go to Woodstock and all the bands are getting along and they're not trying to like blow each other off the stage,
my ideal.
The original ideal is that you're supposed to kind of have, that's what I liked about the 60s, like the Woodstock, before it devolved as like Altamont and it fell apart with the Stones, but the idea that you could have a diverse like group of musicians like you saw at Woodstock, and everybody would get along and everybody would be positive, and it wouldn't be bad events happening, and people would learn from each other and want to collaborate and just do music. And I think that's what communities, a lot of modern communities in music and EDM, electronica and rap and hip hop, have these collectives that are trying to bring that back, in a way, and that's cool, and I think that's really positive. So it sounds like you were around a bunch of people that had that kind of collective thinking, which is
definitely
really good to see.
I feel like it's like that a lot in New York, which is ironic because there is so much competition in New York. But I think that's exactly the thing is like, we all know how different we are. And so it's like, it's not even a matter of one person pitted against another person. It's really just like, everyone's got to support each other, because it's all about getting the right people to hear your sound, who will, affect some sort of change for your career or something like that. But I mean, that doesn't mean that other people's sound, if other people ascend, that doesn't mean anything for you, unless they're people that you've gotten along with, in which case that could only mean good things for you,
well, music, it's very much a communal thing, a concert is a bringing together a lot of people. You make these kind of relationships, then you potentially can collaborate, you can gig, you can find out about opportunities, and it's all about communication. It's being able to, that's the one thing when you physically meet people like at venues and stuff, that's where you can do that. There's all these YouTube stars, and I'm a larger internet presence than my physical presence. but you can do a lot of cool things now. You can do Facebook Live shows. You can collaborate with folks. I've done collaborations. I've never met some of the musicians I've done albums with, and it's there's a lot of cool things you can do. But there's when I go and I play a show and I actually play with a guitar player or a drummer, there's nothing like that, you know. And so like when you're a musician like myself, like you can pretty much, electronic musicians, we can pretty much do everything ourselves. A lot of us are kind of self-contained units, but there's still, if you're a musician, the only way to grow is to play with other people or interact with other people.
There's something about the energy of performing together to a crowd. I don't really know how to describe it. It's just different. It feels like this great, like the surge of team, you know? I mean, I've never played sports, but I imagine that's what it's like playing on a team. Like it, you know, this sense of like, we're all combined to make this awesome, and we're working together, and, you know, and I don't know, that's the most sense of team that I've ever gotten. So, and it's special. It's electrifying. It's really, I think energizing.
Musicians have a lot in common with like sports teams. Like when you're in a full band, you know, and you play as a unit, you've got a connection that's very much teamwork. You know, I think any band has that kind of connection.
I'm so excited because my band, because of the nature of the project, I do end up doing a lot of solo gigs and a lot of gigs with just whoever in my band is available on that particular night, because, you know, they're all busy professionals. And so if someone offers me a gig, I say yes to it, whether or not my band can make it. And if my band can't make it, then I will just play a gig by myself. If some members of my band can make it, then they come and we'll do like a duo or something like that, like Lena and I did for the competition. But on Friday, we're doing a full band show, and it's the first time that we've done one in a very, very long time with like my bassist, my drummer, and my violinist / keyboardist. So I'm so stoked. I'm so stoked about it. We're playing at this place called The Well in Bushwick, and I think it's going to be a really freaking awesome show. I mean, I can't remember the last time my violinist and my full band were together.
Are they the people that put together your EP that we were playing at the beginning?
No. So, you know, New York City is hard, and there's a lot of people that are shuffling through and doing their own thing. So that EP was actually put out a while ago. And with this new band, we are working on putting out a new record. And I'm really excited about it. I'm actually going tomorrow to meet with a sound engineer at his studio and just take a look at the space and talk about stuff like that. But I mean, it is all, again, coordinating is really difficult, making sure you can get everyone in the same place at the same time and practicing and writing together. But I'm just so eager. There's these 2 songs that we've been playing for a while at live shows that are 2 of my favorite songs that I've ever written. And especially with the full band, they are just so exciting to play. And I cannot wait to get them recorded. I really can't, but it's all the logistics that are just.
So is this going to be a full album or an EP?
I'm trying to make it a full album, but it's essentially resources determined.
Yeah. You can have a goal and you got to deal with what you got. Yeah, it's awesome. So you have I guess you say you're still trying to get it together. So is it going to be sometime 2019 release?
I would really, really hope so. That's what I'm going to say. I'm going to say optimistically yes, but I cannot guarantee that at this point. But I'm so eager. I'm just so eager to get some more stuff out. So I'm going to try my hardest to make that happen.
Well, maybe you can get at least the singles out ahead of it, but you never know how you want to manage that. A lot of bands are very single oriented now. I noticed there's a lot of single focused, even on big acts. They seem to be more into running singles again. Which I've been doing all year. I've been going crazy writing singles, but it's good. It pushes a lot of traffic to your web pages and your social media. So, you know, a lot of us have been doing that lately, but having a full album is always the goal. You know, I think any musician wants to put a full concept around what they're working on, you know.
Yeah.
And I think the album format, a lot of people have said, you know, at some points they've said, oh, it's dead. Kids aren't into albums. But, you know, that always ends up being.
Like with millennials, it's all about Spotify and creating your own playlists and little bits of this and little bits of that. And like, it is rare because you don't just stick something in a record machine and keep it on for the full length of it, because now we have all of this variety and this shuffle feature that just brings everything to our fingertips at a time. And so, I mean, I understand the impulse of like not being album oriented anymore, but I think I don't know, something about connecting to the tradition of music makes me want to put out a full album,
I think there are still examples of, at least in hip hop, the album format, again, Kendrick Lamar, and, he goes for album full concepts. So within hip hop and in some electronic music, there's still a lot of, punk rockers still like to put out full records. So there's certain aspects of the music industry, maybe not the top 50 or the top 20 isn't oriented that way, but there are other genres that are still doing it. And so I kind of look to those genres, and I like, all different types of music, but there's still places where that's being done. And so I always tend to listen. I like to listen to full concepts, just because I grew up listening to, Sgt. Pepper, and listening to the Yes album, or,
totally,
like Tapestry. I like feeling, like, understand where an artist is coming from, and having that full concept. You get that picture, and you sit down and you listen to it. That's why I think there's a resurgence in the vinyl. So I think a lot of kids listening to vinyl, they will listen to a full album.
Yeah,
so that's kind of cool.
Yeah, definitely. I had a sort of opportunity to record vinyl records individually. It was like a weird thing that I have to look more into, but it seemed like a really cool thing that a lot of artists are doing, where you make individual vinyl records for individual people, and that's sort of like campaign.
I started looking into that. There's a lot of campaign companies that will do it, and the cost sometimes are like, minimal. And sometimes you don't actually even have to come up with the cash. You can go onto these campaigns and actually get vinyl produced. And I've been looking into it for like a record I've been working on for like a year.
That's awesome.
The fans, there are fans that won't get a CD, but they'll get the vinyl. And so in the vinyl, not to be money oriented, but the profit margin on the vinyl is higher.
That's true. It makes perfect sense.
So if you can do it. If you can get a project done, it's a good opportunity, and you can make out pretty good if you can get it all the way through.
It's a lot. I'm looking at all the things right now. I just want to get the stuff recorded, and then we'll see about vinyl.
Yeah, so I actually had a relationship with this German artist who did one of my record covers, and he does this amazing art. And so we have this project we've been working on where he works with like models, and he does high intensity black and white art called Turnabello.com.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's called Turnabello.com. You'll see him on Instagram. He does this very like MC Escher black and white psychedelic art. So it's, imagine psychedelic art, but it's in high intensity black and white. And he did an album cover for me last year, and it's very psychedelic. It kind of has like a Bowie-esque, like Berlin, it kind of meets psychedelia. And we're working on like some art for the next record. Because like when you do vinyl, the art for the cover becomes more of the focus because you have more landscape to do something artistic. Mm-hmm. And I've been the kind of artist that I love the old album covers. And if I'm I want to do it. I kind of want to do a cover that has like an impact. So I said, well, I'm going to work with a real artist.
Yeah. I love different forms of art coming together. I love that. And there's so many people that I meet that are so talented in visual art. And I'm like, okay, how can I work with you to create a bigger thing than I?
So getting an album cover from a real graphic artist is awesome, It fits the whole project. And then, if you go to shows, you can have the image behind you. And, electronically, it has a lot of imagery that you can run on screens and stuff. And imagery like what I was talking about with that kind of black and white psychedelia is a weird thing, that you could use at a show. And we're working on that for like 2019, but that's where my head's at. But
that sounds super cool.
Well, it's cool. Like, it's great talking to you. If you got like links of anything you want us to push, if you got YouTube videos you want to push on this podcast, because what's cool.
So I'm about to start putting out some videos. This is something I've been wanting to do for a while, but just like cover videos, but of like unexpected covers or covers in weirder ways than you would think they would normally be done. Just because people, like covers, as you mentioned earlier in this conversation, like sometimes that's the way to get people's attention. And if they like the way that you do a certain cover, they might venture into seeing the kind of stuff that you will write on your own. So, I mean, I have this idea. I also love music, and it's sort of a way to pay homage to like my favorite songs, the songs that I think were really well written. So I'm going to be starting to put that out soon, but I don't have anything up quite yet on my YouTube page. And then the other thing is that I did do a collaboration a while back now that my producer for it, he's like, he told me it was going to be mid October that we were going to release it. And now it's sometime next month. And honestly, I don't know when it actually will be, but apparently it's going to be soon. And I'm just going to continue to believe that.
What's cool about our podcast is that we can put it out, and any link we can actually add to it, and it will just get republished with any updated information. And so
that's great. That's really
so cool. What's cool about this platform compared to the old one is we're actually on Spotify, we're on Apple. So if you go on Spotify or you go on Apple and you go and look in the podcast and you type in like Family Electric Ghost, we'll show up in the Spotify playlist for podcast. We show up on the Apple.
That's awesome.
We show up on like Stitcher, Radio Public. We're on like 10 different podcast platforms now. So when we push this out, if you've got any links that you would want to attach to this, we can attach your EP from SoundCloud or any other link that you think is cool. Let me know tonight. I can actually put something that will get published on those platforms tonight. So
that's fantastic.
Just let me know which thing you want to push, and we'll attach that link to the podcast.
Okay, well, that sounds great. I will definitely do that.
Cool. So, and we can publish like pretty quick. So you send me that tonight, and this podcast will get published tonight. And we'll start to migrate on all the platforms. And I'll send you the links as they get published, so you can tell your fans about it.
Oh, definitely.
And
Can't wait.
We have a blogger page where we push all of our interviews. And so we'll add this interview to our blogger page and to our Facebook and our Instagram and all those other things. We can add this as an Instagram story on our page. The Spotify playlist can be pushed onto Instagram as a story, as a highlight. And so then it becomes embedded on the page. So that's something cool.
The age of social media, you can do anything. It's amazing.
We kind of moved to because it has a lot of capability, and it lets us push a lot of cool
That's great.
things. And so just let everybody know, the other thing we do is we are fan supported. People can subscribe to us now. It's free. But if you like what we're doing, you like hearing the interviews we do, people can subscribe for like $1 a month or $4.99 or $9.99. And what we've been doing is we've got some old albums on Amazon.com that we're giving to people who subscribe. And so they'll get a physical CD of a Ghost album on a physical album to the people who subscribe at the higher levels of $4.99 to $9.99. And
that's a great perk. That's really smart.
Great stuff. And then we also, for musicians, they're into like getting beats, like hip hop artists and electronic musicians. We are selling beat services, so we will create beats for the different subscription levels, and it's all be advertised on our main site what we do. But
wow, super original.
We just try to do what we can.
I think it's really creative that you're using all of your skills and getting all of that to be able to connect with musicians and listeners and your audience.
We try to do a little bit of a hustle, but
it's always a hustle. It's always a hustle doing what you love, trying to figure out a possible way to get the most out of it.
We'll definitely want to talk to you when you get closer to your album release, and anytime you've got a project you want to push, we can tweet it out and stuff. So just let us know. We'll be out there pushing you because we think you're a really great artist. We love your work.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. Everything that you have invited me to, like all these discussions, have always been really great and enjoyable, and I really appreciate it, man.
Thank you. And I'll let you know when it's ready. Once you send me the link, I'll start to push it out, and you'll get the podcast out there tonight.
Okay. All right. Sounds great.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks. Take care. Bye.
Aria, this is Phantom Electric Ghost. You on the line?
Hey. Hi. How's it going? I'm so sorry. My phone
Going
it was
really
freezing.
Well.
It was doing weird stuff. Answer what was going on, but then it worked. So I'm here. Hi.
Yeah, I'm really excited. You're the first interview for 2018.
Oh, wow. I'm honored to be the first of that year. Yay. This year.
Yeah, we're happy to have you on. We like to interview indie artists that are singer-songwriters and give them some a platform to be able to talk. And so,
well, I super appreciate that because it's, what I do and what I love doing. So I'm great at talking about it because it's just my thing.
Yeah, that really was like, listening to your music on your SoundCloud and also on iTunes and Spotify, your EP. And what we usually like to do is sometimes we like to play selections from your album and put them on SpareMin and then talk about each song a little bit. So we could do that. But I kind of wanted to get into maybe a little bit about your background. That was on your website, and you didn't have a lot of information other than you say.
No, I'm really bad at
other people.
Just get really awkward. I'm like, what do people want to know about me? I don't even know. I don't know what's much about me, so I'm just gonna write that I like dogs because it's true.
That's fine.
But no, I mean, I can tell you things. I just I can't figure out my own points of interest. People will really be like, oh, this is a thing about her that's interesting. I'm just like, it's random.
I could start off with some standard questions I ask artists. So
okay, that I'm good with. I can do standard questions.
So it's okay, when did you first get into music? What age?
I would say when I okay at guitar, and I could play things and sort of teach myself how to play my own songs, or I could fiddle around and start writing things, and that's when I really was like, wow, I like writing songs and I love because I grew up loving music and loving Broadway and everything. My sister was obsessed with musicals, so therefore so was I. And so I would sing a lot of operatic-y type stuff all the time, but I didn't have super confidence about it. And then I remember one day getting and I was playing around on my guitar. Was covering a song by Ida Maria because I just started listening to indie music and I got really into it, and I was singing it, and I realized that because I was sick I was sort of sounding like her, and I had this raspier tone, and it was working out really well, and I was like, I really like this. So then even after I stopped getting sick, I sort of taught myself that sort of vocal style, and I let it sort of take over, and I just fell in love with it, and I just wrote songs with this sort of new voice that I found.
Yeah, that voice is very powerful. You've got a really awesome lead vocalist.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, because I mean, as indie artists, sometimes people will take their approach well, I'm going to be like a Bob Dylan. I'm not a perfect pitched singer. I'm going to be.
And that's great. And that's great. Bob Dylan is ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean that's great. It's great music. I mean, the music is more important than his voice. I mean, his lyrics are so.
There's so many different elements to music, and you just find the right balance that works for you and your song and your style.
But a really good vocalist is always good to hear.
Oh, well, thank you. That's nice.
Yeah, and so another question is so when you started getting into music and knowing that you could actually make your mark and actually do something more than be a cover band, know that you wanted to have your own voice, you wanted to do your own work. When did you kind of realize you wanted to do that?
Well, it's funny because I always just sort of singing. I'm the sort of weirdo who just sings about everyday tasks that she's doing, kind of things like that, where melodies are just constantly kind of flowing through my head. And obviously that kind of thing isn't really serious, but when I first started playing guitar, I would just stumble over little things that I liked, and then I'd just go into a chord progression and start singing a melody. And I realized that sometimes I really liked these, and I could fit them together like a
sort of a fun challenge. And then I started like really writing, like, I've always loved like creative writing and poetry too, but so just sort of fusing these elements, thinking about what I wanted to write about, and then merging that. And then I started just going to open mics when I was 14 or so, maybe 17. I don't remember, probably 17. And I just, I found this community of people who were all debuting things that they had put together, and I loved it. It's like, I want to do this. I want to create things like this.
So you're a native New Yorker?
Well, I'm from Yonkers.
Yeah.
And some people who are from like Manhattan would say, I hate those people. And I would say yes.
So I think, yeah, you kind of have a really good art community there in terms of a lot of musicians, a lot of support, I think, for what you're trying to do.
Yeah, I wouldn't have it any other way.
For original music, it's
yeah.
that's a really, I mean, I've actually traveled to New York and played some clubs, around, just, because in New Hampshire, they just want to hear cover bands. So it's hard to do original music.
Yeah, well, you got to do crowd pleasers.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you should be in a wedding band. You'll make good money. And I'm like, but I don't want to sing those songs. Like, I mean, they're good songs. They're fun, but that's not going to do anything for me. Like it's.
Yeah. Well, you have the drive to write your own music, which is like, that's the kind of spark that really interests me, because I love listening to indie music and talking.
Oh, that's great. So do I.
Artists, all over the world. I've been talking since the last year. And, and so you started with like guitar, or what instrument did you start on?
Well, I'm like guitar and ukulele as far as instruments, but I started singing when I was a kid, and like that's always been my primary instrument, and I hate the
Yeah. Well, that's cool. So I think I want to play your first track for your EP.
Sure.
No Gauge.
Yes, No Gauge.
So do you want to give a little like backstory to the song, or just talk about it after?
I want to talk about it after, because I think it's not very explicit in what it's about, but I think it's kind of interesting. So yeah, I'm curious to know if anyone's going to come up with their own opinion, and then I can sort of be like, well, this is what I had in mind when I wrote it. I don't know.
Okay, well, just go on mute while I play it. And
okay, I just click mute.
Yeah, just like click the mute, so then
you got it.
Okay, and then I will let you know when to come back in.
With this coming of age, and still I should know better. In the end, silence stays to me. Such like it, but see, I really should know better. But what do I know? I was just born into without a love. Put on this soul when I'm done to watch from the stairs above. Just so just look every swing and keep on breathing. You're lacking in aggression, and don't react if you're hurt. You're bound to be crushed. Stay in your own possession. So what do I do? I was just giving out power and no gain. floating on, swimming in my rays at this and I will not let myself down. I will not let myself down. I will not let myself down. So what do I know? I was just born into the ring without a glove. So put on this show when there's something to watch from the sands above. And what do? I was just giving
So that was Ariahand and No Gauge from her EP.
It's Ariah, actually. Sorry, I just jumped back in.
Okay.
No, totally fine. It happens literally. It's just I should make it more. I should put in one of those little pronunciation ditties. You know
So
what I mean?
how do you say it again?
Ariah, like Mariah without the M. Yeah. Sorry about that.
Ariah. And it's and because you work with a lot of different people.
Yeah, exactly. So I sort of leave it open-ended, and then depending on the gig, we'll always introduce ourselves as something different. Sometimes it's just me and by myself, and it's Ariah and this whiskey sour, which is generally the case.
So that basically you have the line like I'm in the ring without a glove.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting you to play the whole song. That was kind of cool. I was like, oh, great.
Well, I like to give artists, like I usually spend like 50 minutes or more on an interview, and a lot of times, sometimes they go over an hour, and I like to give an artist like a full ability to show their work if they have it. And so,
yeah, well, I appreciate that. I think that's a really great thing to do.
Yeah, because I was kind of disappointed a couple of years ago. I'm an indie artist myself, and I was running into people who were asking for money to do like online interviews, and I said, well, you know what, people should do that because they want to do it, like be like a journalist or something, and I couldn't find anybody
Right.
doing it, and I said, well, I'll just do it myself.
Oh. Yeah, wow. Well, that's great. Oh, can I curse? I didn't even realize I
No, you
did
can't.
that.
This is totally
Okay.
totally
Sorry, I'm a New Yorker. It just comes out.
No, it doesn't matter. We kind of, SpareMin doesn't matter to me for any language. They don't edit what we do, which is really cool.
Okay, that's great.
And yeah, so you say you won't let yourself down is another line.
Yeah,
and, yeah. So it seems like it's like there's you don't have a gauge to measure like what's going on in your life. You're kind of going out there and kind of, you're not going to be judged or you're not going to be limitations.
Yeah. So this song, it's a little bit of all of that, and it was written after. Sorry. I mean, a big theme in a lot of my music is that I sort of grew up with depression, and so like a lot of my music is like obviously a way of releasing, like art is all dealing with your shit. Yeah. So like the realist art anyway. And so this song, when I grew up, like I was really the opposite of a confident person. I kind of, a lot of young adolescent girls really hate themselves because of the way that women are portrayed in media and things like that. And I was an overweight like my entire life, and I just thought of myself as this like horrible troll that nobody would ever want to be with. And it was just like
that was just my understanding of myself. And then, of course, like there was a period like after when I was in college where I started to feel really confident and really happy, and I was being treated for my depression.
Mm-hmm.
So when that was happening, I lost a lot of weight, and I also just felt like a much better person. And so I felt like I was finally in this game of like dating, which I know sounds really terrible, but I didn't even like really consider it before. And then all of a sudden I was someone who had been like watching everybody do this like interaction with like, this is really hard to like put into words that aren't music. But it was all of a sudden I was into the ring, like, and I didn't know what the hell I was doing, and I didn't know how to go on a date and like be charming. I was just this like awkward ball of what's going on. So in some ways I'm definitely still like that. But
I think a lot of artistic people that I've talked to, they're artists, photographers, anybody that's an artist that spends a lot of time like with their craft. That means a lot of times you're alone or you're with other artists. And sometimes I've noticed that sometimes a common theme with a lot of artists is they're kind of isolated, and they're somewhat awkward, and they throw that energy into their art, and it really shows who they are in their art. And sometimes a lot of artists are not as confident as they seem to be when they get on stage.
Yeah, it's so true. It's a good thing when I get on stage I don't seem confident at all. I sort of just like awkward weirdo throughout the whole thing.
But your voice kind of projects a confidence that, like, even your speaking voice, I think it projects something that people probably wouldn't expect. I think that sometimes artists are able to transform themselves through when they do their art, that they actually become somewhat a different part of themselves. That they
I totally get that. I think that's so true.
Yeah, you can pull a different part of yourself. And I think a really good example, like Prince was super shy, but he projected this image like he was like the king of the world.
Oh, Prince. Oh, God, yeah.
But if you actually talk to him, he was painfully shy. He had a hard time communicating at all. I mean, I met him one time. He's very hard to communicate. He was just so awkward. And then you see the image of him on TV and everything, and it looked like it was a totally different person.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I think that.
Yeah, it just shows you that like everything, even like confidence itself, it's just like a show, you just like put a smile on and walk out there no matter how you feel.
Yeah, I think it's like
I mean, that sounds so grim. That sounds really grim. Like, no, a lot of the times I'm actually like really happy, and of course I love doing it, and it makes me really happy always. So but no, I don't really know where I was going with that. I'm okay now, really.
That's fine. I mean, I know. I mean, I kind of like I'm like the last person anybody thought would ever like sing, and now I've got I actually have a band and I played I've been working with all these different people all over the world, and it's one thing I wanted to kind of bring up with you. I wasn't sure is I'm actually in connection with this French music collective called Monsters Tea Party with a Z. And
that sounds really cool.
Yeah, they're actually going to have me, go to France in June, and they're going to have this concert thing that they're doing, like a big, like outdoor concert thing, and it's with artists and photographers and all these different things. And I kind of showed them your music, and they had an interest in talking to you. So like after, I'll give you their contact information.
Yes, please. That's amazing. I did a semester in Paris. I need to brush up on my French.
Well, they're cool. I mean, they have people who speak English because, like, how people.
No, I'm sure everyone in France speaks English, but I practice my French.
There's a woman named Nell Brincat, and I'll give you her information after. I'll give it to you directly.
Sure, thank you very much.
I gave her the 411 on you, and I gave her a link to your EP, and she was very interested in talking to you about, finding a way to get you to France.
Oh my God! Wow.
So that might be cool. And I'm myself with my project, but
No, that would be a fun, an amazing adventure. I am always down for an adventure.
Any musician is always looking for an audience, always looking for a good gig, and so I figured I just give you the option, to say yes or no. if you were interested into it. And so it's pretty cool.
Oh, interest is definitely there. Logistics may be an issue,
it's
but
always hard to do it. You never know if you
yeah.
already got stuff booked or you're working with your manager, your management, whatever. You never know what you can do. But
it's a whole
it's just out there.
Yeah. Well, I love that it's out there. I'm excited about it.
It's cool. Yeah, you never know who you run into. I actually was working with a German artist that's out on Instagram named Chernobyl.com. I don't know if you've ever seen it. Chernobyl, he does this high intensity black and white art. And he actually did the cover of an album that I had a collaboration with this Los Angeles artist called All Control K. And we had an album and he did the cover. And then he actually knew this French collective. And he said, I should talk to Nell because she might be interested in what I was doing. And so then I started talking to Nell. And now I'm actually going to be working on a video podcast talking to European artists like in Germany and France and London and stuff. We're doing like a Facebook Live type of interview show.
That's amazing. That sounds really interesting.
Yeah, and I think, I'll give you the option if you ever want to come on that show, because we're going to start kicking it off this Saturday. We're going to be talking to a German graphic artist.
Wow.
But again, this graphic artist got me in touch with that collective. And now I got in touch with them. And now I'm talking to this videographer from Greece who's working on, going to work on putting the show up on YouTube and maybe see if he can get it on Twitch. And so there's all this stuff you never know. You just put it out there. You talk to people. And I was painfully shy. I would never talk to people. I'm 50 years old now, but when I was in my 20s, I had a hard time talking to anybody. So, I understand that because really it's hard to get.
I'm love talking to people. I just stupid shit a lot. So.
Well, everybody has to what they got to deal with. But let me get some more questions. So, in terms of your influences in your music, I can hear some influences, but I want to hear who besides you had mentioned before were your influences as an artist, as a woman, female artist. What?
Oh my God, where to begin? Well, I got into really indie music. I used to, when I was in middle school, I had this emo phase, and then I emerged from the emo phase listening to the Shins, who are to this day my favorite band.
Oh, awesome.
So, I love their songwriting and the sort of, the way that they have their song structures, their melody structures, their harmonies, and all the different instrumentation. I'm so enamored with them, and I'd like to think that sort of they're, but then of course, when it comes to singing, of course, I have to go back and say it's the crooners, it's the people who invented this sort of jazz and style. It's the Etta James and the Billie Holiday and everyone who had that tone in their voice, that sort of sultry, silky tone that I just love. And so of course I have been trying to emulate people like that since I was a kid, but then
you have that really good bass tone in your voice.
Thank you. And I loved listening to Ingrid Michaelson and Sarah Bareilles, and of course Florence and the Machine, my goddamn hero. And Amy Winehouse, Nora Jones. I could just go on.
I can hear the Florence and the Machine, but you're not. I can see that they're a reference point, and but you're not doing exactly what she does, which is.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, because I try to mix it. I would hope so. I do definitely want to be my own.
I feel
own thing.
You have your own style, but you can hear where people could say what does she sound like. It's a good reference point to kind of say. But I really, everybody I've shown your music to, a lot of my friends, they're all like, wow, you're amazing. Yeah, they really.
Oh my God! It's so super flattering.
Yeah, one of the best singers I've heard in a long time that I didn't know of. And I said, well, I need to know more about what you're doing.
That's great. I'm happy to share always.
So I want to play your next song, Disenchanted, and so we'll go through the same thing, and and then we'll talk about it on the backside. But
sure.
Thank you. Here we go.
Oh, mute. Sorry.
Just because she can land on her feet doesn't mean that you should have let her down. Just because she's an ambitious woman doesn't mean that she'll kill for the crown. You dropped in like an angel and faded to a shadow bay ending. And I know that we were never thick as thieves, but I didn't think that we were so sad. And when I say this is important to me, do you not believe or do you not care? Because I mean I believe in you. And then one day you were there. How lucky for me that we should tend to agree. So we found other people to stand by our side, but they all got busy on radio side. And when they left out, that we followed the tide. But your feet, they stay planted. I don't take that for granted. We all get disenchanted, but hey, I respect that you tried. You dancing like an angel and faded to a shadow bay ending. And I know that we were never thick as thieves, but I didn't think that we were so scared.
So that was Disenchanted from Ari. I keep on saying your name wrong.
Araya, it's fine.
And yeah, from her EP, which is out on SoundCloud, and you probably better if you get it on iTunes or Spotify, because you want to support indie artists. So everybody there can play it on Spotify, because if you play it there, artists get paid. You know, if you play it on, you get paid. So support indie artists.
I like money.
Yeah,
I don't really have much.
but a lot of kids today don't realize that, you know, music shouldn't just be free. That artists have to survive, and it's fine. The kid grew up in the age of, you know, Napster, and, you know, think that you can just grab music for free because it doesn't matter. But I think if you love a musician, you should support.
It's so funny because it's like the difference between like giant, you know, record labels, like signed artists who aren't really getting much money from the money you spend on their music. Their real source of income comes from touring.
Yeah.
But for indie artists who are just starting out, you know, and they don't have a label setting them up for sales, it's a little bit tougher than that. So
yeah, I mean, touring is even hard, you know, because I've tried to go and tour, you know, and then you get club owners that don't kind of gyp you on how many people are in the club. He's like, oh, there's 400 people, and like when they're really 500, or, you know, you got to have your own roadies to count stuff, and then you got to steal your equipment and all this stuff. But yeah, so I mean, yeah, it's hard as an indie artist to get out there. That's why I'm kind of looking at Europe. Is kind of where I've been looking, because the type of music I play is more electronic, and it's a big audience out there for that type of stuff.
Absolutely, that's really cool.
So that's where I've been kind of focused. And but with your type of music within the States, you can do really well. But the reception from the French is very, very good. So I think in Europe you would clean up as well.
Oh, wow, thank you.
And,
I like the phrase clean up. That's fun.
Well, I believe if you got on the big outdoor festivals, I think
Yeah.
totally, if there was a way for you to get seen, if you could, if this opportunity with them in June could seg into getting you on those other tours, if people got interest, if people were there, I think that would be really cool, because I think you really belong on the stages based on
thank you.
Yeah, I mean, what I hear in your music is like, there's no reason why you shouldn't be out there. I mean, I think
I agree with you. I'm excited to just hear it coming from someone other than like my own head, because then I sometimes think, am I crazy?
No, you're not. I mean, you're phenomenal. I mean,
thank you.
I understand some artists,
but it's a weird thing, because there are so many talented people out there, and there's so many people just putting their hearts and souls into it and creating great work, that it's like, it's hard to imagine that, any one of us like stands a chance of being heard and getting a bigger audience among all the rest. Like, how do you make something stand out? So just any form of encouragement is really amazing to hear, and it's really just such a blessing.
Yeah, it's just like, a lot of artists, I feel sometimes when you talk to them, they seem to be like, you got a level head, and you're not, you're kind of modest, but your capabilities are like really, you're one of the best artists I've heard in a long time. So,
wow. Okay. Wow.
so
that's amazing.
I don't want to freak you out, but
no, you're not. No, don't give me a big head. It's not going to be pretty for anyone.
But so let me get back into more of the interview questions. So
yeah.
So if you were going to describe the genre of music that you like, that you actually work in, that what you want people to understand, how would you describe it? What would you say your genre is?
I would say, like, oh my God, soulful, folky indie rock, maybe.
Yeah, it feels like it. It's kind of like a roots, soulful kind of thing, the way you were talking about, like Etta James and Nora Jones and the Florence and Machine. It's kind of, you got this indie, strong, singer songwriter kind of like profile. That's
yeah. Okay. Yeah. I think that's a good way of putting it.
Yeah, because there's so many people out there. You've got, like, you're rooted in, like, to me, like, real songwriting. Not that other people don't do real songwriting, but the fact that you can hear the acoustic instruments and the construction of your song, it doesn't feel like it was just all done in a digital audio workstation.
Oh yeah, no, definitely not. It all happens when I'm feeling emotional with my guitar.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of music today, not to put it down, because there's some really good stuff that's done that way, but I think some people have lost the art of songwriting. And I think that you are one of the people that's still doing, like, the classic songwriting that we see. They went back to the 60s and in the 70s. I'm 50 years old, so I'm a kid that grew up, with listening to albums that were done, at the Hit Factory and a record plant, Electric Lady, and listening to people who really were album oriented. And I would say that your EP is very album oriented.
Thank you for saying that. I think that's
because I mean, so many people write songs that are kind of like, it's just like single oriented, and you actually have this EP has a cohesion to it that is like, a classic album. So I dig that kind of thing. That's what I'm, where I come from, is like listening to, Tapestry and listening to really good albums, like Todd Rundgren and stuff like that. I mean, just good singer-songwriters, classic writers, that have something to say and construct it in an honest way. And I feel like the honesty and your emotion is coming through, and that's really cool.
Oh, thank you. I think it is. I mean, I do try to be honest, because if it's not, then it's not real art. I appreciate that a lot. I really do.
So when you record, are you going to a traditional recording studio in New York City, or are you doing it in a home studio? How are you doing it?
My last one was sort of a traditional situation, except it was a friend's studio, so it was a little bit like discounted, because there are a lot of like when you're, I don't know, you try to make a lot of connections, you meet a lot of other people who are interested in music, you get tips about like a lot of people have their own like self-made studios that are actually really functional. And so yeah, so a lot of people that you meet in New York could end up really helping you out, and especially if you appreciate each other's music and each other's vibe. So I've been very lucky and like blessed in that way. But I am also looking to record more, and I think this time I have to take a little bit more out of my pocket. So I'm working on that.
So you're working on going to an established studio or trying to build your own?
I think I'm working toward going to an established studio, but when I say established, I don't mean like established.
More like an indie kind of somebody like's got a really good.
Sure. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, that's where a lot of that is happening now, because people, there's more. You can have access to the equipment. And it's not as crazy as building like $1 million, $2 million studio. You can actually build decent stuff with the equipment that's out there nowadays. But that's really cool. And so, like, I guess like the question was like I like to ask you, like, what was the date of the first like live show that you did that you could remember? That was like you would consider like your first real live show as who you are now.
As who I am now.
Mm-hmm.
Man, that's a great question, because I feel like I've been like evolving throughout. Like I've been playing in New York for quite a while. I guess I would say, I started my first like, okay, I'm going to sing in front of all these people at like my high school talent shows, and then like I had written a few songs in high school that I performed and at my talent shows, which was terrifying because I had the worst stage fright back then. So that's when I started going to open mics to sort of fix that. And then after playing open mics for a while, I got offered, a gig at Sidewalk, which was the one that my most loyal place. And then that was my first gig. I was offered a gig, and people, I told my parents came out and like everything. And I don't remember exactly what age. I must have still been in high school. But then I just started throughout college. I was playing little gigs here and there in the Lower East Side. So I've been doing it for a while. And I think like just more recently I started playing like, I don't know, still a lot of the same places, just because I love them and I have a good relationship and they feel like home.
Mm-hmm.
But what, I played the Bitter End last year, which was a really fun, like a Saturday night, and I played my first So Far Sound show, which was really exciting. And I don't know, I'm just trying to, it's hard when not a lot of people know who you are, because they want to draw. It's really all they're looking for.
Yeah.
And so the places that know me and like my music will book me all the time, but then I, send something to Bowery Presents and they're like, how many people can you get out? And I'm like, I don't really know.
Yeah. That's where you have to get like the promotion machine behind it. It's hard without a label to get
Exactly.
that.
And without money.
It's hard to get that, because you got to like, it's disappointing that there's not as much resources going into artist development, and promotion.
It's so true. It's so true, because some people just get lucky and their stuff goes viral, or I just, it's so hard to, like a lot of these record labels won't sign you until you build your own following via the internet, which is such like a luck thing,
Yeah, because even if you go and do a lot of YouTube videos, like you go
and a lot of hashtagging and hard work putting it out there, and that all feels like selling out, because it's like, I just want to make my music.
Yeah, it's just like the way the world is. Like if you could get a good SEO tags for your a YouTube video, like you're such a good singer, you're such an awesome singer. Like if you did a really good video of you playing at a club and just had a 3-minute video of you really captured with good sound, and then put it up on YouTube and did the right SEO on it, that can actually do a lot of work to actually getting you, more known. And one of the things that I'm working on with the French Collective is we're doing that video thing that we're going to try to put together. And so like in the future, if you think about if you can get somebody to video you at a show and get it up on YouTube, do the SEO on it, maybe get some friends that know they're techies that know how to do the SEO,
I think that's what I'm missing. I have a great videographer friend. I have a few videos up on YouTube, but
Yeah, that's
always
always
down
the
to record
problem.
more.
Is like you really got to get the right tags to get it out there.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, I think that's the whole game nowadays. And a lot of
Yeah.
the DJs and stuff are really good at it. They're good at getting that kind of stuff out, and a lot of electronic artists are pushing that. And the hip hop artists are really good at it. But we got to get other indie artists that are kind of like the type of artists I like are not doing as well at it, because this seems to be the age of the other types of artists. But I feel that everybody is still out there, and there's an audience in all over the world. You'd be surprised. Sometimes you could find an audience in some foreign country, and you could go to Japan, and suddenly everybody loves you. You could go somewhere in Europe and suddenly get a really big amount of people to come out at you, and you wouldn't even expect it. And so
Wow.
so that's sometimes you got to look a little bit beyond your home base sometimes. But
Yeah.
that's just the way the world is. But it's hard to figure out, where that is. But you just put things out there and see what you can do. So I always ask people if you collaborate, but your whole band seems like your whole concept is you collaborate with a lot of different people all the time, right?
Yeah, I do try to. Like, I've had people regular people who I play with in and out, but I have so many musicians in the city who are all doing different things, and so many artist friends. So I just really like to do a lot of different fun things with them and get as many people involved. Like, when I appreciate someone's work, I want to harness it. I want to work with it, and so I have a few people who have been pretty great, and it's also difficult when you can't really afford to pay. It's not like I get paid for my gigs, so they really have to really just love the music and love playing in order to play with me.
Yeah.
Which but it's a blessing when they do. So I have a group of people right now who are all busy professionals, but every once in a while we get to play together, and it is just a dream we do. I love playing with a full band. And these people are truly talented. Some of them are coworkers of mine or people I met through workers, and just good friends who happen to be really talented and great humans.
Yeah, that's awesome because like in the last year I collaborated with a bunch of people doing collaborations with different groups. I collaborated with a group called Lonnie Claire, which is a guy that I used to do the SpareMin show with. This guy named Brian. He had a band called Lonnie Claire, and then All Control K out in Los Angeles, and it was all through the net. We all kind of had our own home studios, and we exchanged wave files, and we combined our music and tracked it, and it was all done by sending files over Google Drive.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's super cool.
And so we were able to kind of just put the time in. We didn't get paid, other than we put the stuff out there to get pennies on Spotify.
Right.
or
Yeah.
percentages of pennies. Like 0.07 of a penny. But yeah, I mean, it's just I like to work with people, and I used to be able to play with people live, but lately I've been able to do these collaborations over the net, which is kind of cool, because then you can,
that's definitely cool.
Because then you can if you get a vibe with somebody and you can try something. So I always put it out there that I'm always willing to collaborate with artists, and so I try to do that as much as I can. But it's cool that you're doing that already. That's really cool.
Thank you.
And so have you thought about so the different collaborations you're working with, have you thought actually crossing into different genres, like jazz or hip hop or
it's funny that you mentioned that. I sort of have been working on a side project. It's not exactly Ariahand, but a friend of mine who used to be based in New York, and he just moved out to LA. But we did this side project together recently, which is just being finished up and finalized now. And he's a really amazing producer. He does a lot of online compositions for trailers and Victoria's Secret ads and things like that. And he also does a lot of really great hip hop beats and tracks. And so he came to me with this idea of sort of a very, I have different parts of my voice and different ways that I use it a lot. And so sometimes it can be hefty and soulful, but sometimes I just make it really floaty and weird, high. And so he had this idea of sort of using these hip hop tracks and having a really ethereal vocal over it. And he gave me some examples of some like weird, funky 70s type, like electronic-y, interesting bands. So it's a very different project from what I'm used to, and it was so much fun to work on.
Are you still going to be tagged as are you changing who you are in that?
Yeah, I think it's gonna be like a side project, I think.
Oh, cool. Yeah, that's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So let me see. I think I'm going to play the next song.
Sure, yeah.
Gold
Bring it
Bottle,
on.
and we'll do the same thing. So you go on mute, and then we'll play that.
Okay. Oh yeah, I keep forgetting. It's a good thing you reminded me. Great. Thanks.
Right. Here we go with Gold Bottle.
Won't stop thinking about stop not giving it up. I deserve the shifty point of view. I don't miss it on my eye. Now it's falling behind. I hope this new understanding is true. I wish I could watch it go down. A beauty certain to a star. And then watch my trouble go down. I am letting the sound they make is and my boots in my arms look so good in my palms. I'm becoming someone I admire. With my bottle in hand, change my tutu again. I'll breathe in the wind and breathe out fire. I wish I could watch it go down. A beauty certain to a star. And I watch my troubles go no, I am letting the sound they make is I don't want to be just one, but I don't know if I can feel it. Let's try just to feel it. Can buy me more than but I might miss that close, that close. I don't know if I can feel it. Let's go, just to feel it. Can buy me more than but I might miss that close, that close.
So that was Gold Bottle, And I love the arrangement on that with the horns and the bass, and then the guitar work is just really, that's really awesome. It's like, so how can you talk about how that came together with all?
Um, yeah, sure. So it started with the melody that like it got like sometimes I'll just have melodies. I'm like, I really like this, and it just pops in my head. And so I recorded that, and then I sort of tried to find um a chord progression that I liked with it, and I ended up going with this like really fast marchy. I think it was sort of, like the adventure of writing a song and then getting other ideas when listening to your own song. Like sometimes I'll be listening to a regular song and I'll just hear this harmonic melody, something that I would like, it goes with it. And so with the sort of instrumentation on these tracks, a lot of it, like I said, I have very talented friends who are great musicians, and so I love their input and what they, their instincts. So when we get together and I show them this is a song, like sometimes they'll put their, spin on. Like my bassist, I think mainly my first bassist, came up with the main bass line for that song. And then the horns, they were played by a good friend of mine, Andy Neasley from Jesus on the Main Line, which is another amazing indie band that you should check out. They're like a 15-piece amazing band. I can't, sorry, whole different.
I'll try to find
it. Yeah, they're phenomenal. But he did me a solid, and I had this melody in my head that I would like hear that ooze, and when I was playing, I just had this like da 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 da
yeah.
sort of, and I was like, oh, that would be really cool with trumpet, and so I got him in there. So yeah, just like I think about what my friends have to offer, and I think of a lot of counter melodies, and I try to put those two together.
Yeah, that is it's a really, I love that sound, because you don't really hear people writing like that. That kind of again goes back to like the singer-songwriter type of vibe, and the actual like idea of having a full band, playing like that and kind of vibing off each other and coming up with parts. That to me, in some ways today, is kind of a lost art, except in the indie community where these bands exist. But like on the radio, you don't hear a lot of bands like that a lot.
Right. I totally agree.
Pro Tools kind of same producers going over and over. Not that these guys, they're making millions of dollars, whatever. But the problem is they're kind of making music, into a formula, and it's not allowing the really good singer-songwriters to get to the top.
Right. I totally agree.
Yeah, I think they're going for these things that are kind of like, I don't know, junk food melodies that people, they like it because it's catchy.
It's catchy. It stays in your head all day, right?
Yeah. Work out, and you can put your iPhone headphones on and do a jog around the park.
Just like go to that beat real hard. And there's nothing wrong with a great beat. A great beat, there's so much, to be said for a great beat. Like, but no, I understand. Like, I'm very melody driven. I mean, I love the conversation between them is the most important thing. But
yeah. I just think it's not satisfying to like the heart and soul of a fan. I think a lot of fans are getting kind of, pulled into this kind of junk food music and they're getting pulled into it, and it's easy to kind of get pulled and say, well, I got to have these really catchy beats, and they're not really thinking about the depth of music. Like how many kids today would actually listen to Blonde on Blonde, or listen to like Van Morrison, or listen to like the deeper stuff, or they just go for like the kind of cheap thing. And I mean, it's kind of like the way the world is today. But when I listen to you, I hear a lot of things that kind of remind me, like of Van Morrison, and remind me, the Shins, and remind me of Florence and the I hear that stuff.
That is really, really, really flattering and awesome to hear. Yeah, that's a great compliment. I feel great about that. I hope that I am just getting across and resonating with people. That's really all I want. You know,
we got to get everybody to know who you are, because
hey, I'm for it.
Yeah, because it's just that's it's the type of music that really it's satisfying. I mean, as a musician, I like to hear people really killing it, and you're one of these people. So that's been really cool. And
oh wow.
But so like if you were thinking about the future of music, and I know you're doing what you do. But it sounds like you're already kind of doing that, where you're willing to do that collaboration in Los Angeles. So you're. I think a lot of times when I've talked to people, my idea of the future of music is like crossing genres. Is taking.
Oh, I love that.
Taking somebody and like, okay, you're a rock and roller, go do some jazz. You're a punk rock, do some hip hop. Try to cross into a different genre and see what you can do.
Yeah, one of my friends asked me the other day if I had to categorize my genre, what would it be? Even just like my vocal genre, and I was like, I don't know, I would put it under 3 categories, and then he was like, but if you had to choose one, I was like, but that's the whole point. I don't want to choose one. I want to mix them together. Like I want to create something new and take all the elements of these things that I love and try to create something a little bit more interesting and dynamic and weave them into like a quilt,
Yeah, I think that is where, if you see the artists that really are on the cutting edge, it's the ones that do cross into genres, that do bring jazz or bring some hip hop elements or bring some punk or bring some, they just don't want to get pinned down. And so I think that's where like the future of music is not being so segmented or so segregated. I mean, I think the problem in the US is like there's like a segregation of the music. If you go into unless you're on the net, but if you go into typical radio stations, they're still playing the same playlist they've been playing since '74.
Well, yeah,
they're not trying to be adventurous. If you listen to the BBC, it's not the case. They've got multiple genres, being played all the time. So they're mixing hip hop with jazz, with country, with ska, with everything. And there's a whole audience in Europe that's really into listening to new things. They're not just wanting to recycle Led Zeppelin over and over and over again. They want to hear something different.
I think that's incredibly admirable, and I
just think I think a lot of artists need to like go to where the markets are.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it looks like to me that the future for a lot of artists that are kind of pushing it or is to actually, go outside the US. And that's where a lot of your audience is probably not in the US, they're probably outside.
Yeah. Well, I love to travel, so I am for various audiences and see who will accept me.
Yeah. I would be surprised if they wouldn't just open up like the floodgates. It's like you really got something here. So let me get to Plastic, and I'm going to play that. And I want to play all the songs on this, so we're going to go till we get to the end.
Hey.
So we'll play Everlasting and go on mute, and then we'll talk about it.
Okay, perfect.
What's gonna happen? Will there be an end? Life is energy, and energy is everlasting. Changing forms with light, and we are healed. We're everlasting. Life is energy. Life is energy. So what's gonna happen when I'm gone?
So that was everlasting. And that's interesting because I'm a Buddhist, so I kind of believe in this kind of like, energy and life form kind of pass between different forms. That's kind of like a belief I already have.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
that's
I sort of
interesting.
merged elements on that.
Yeah, because like life is energy and energy is everlasting, and you change in forms. I hear that, and what's going to happen. But yeah, that's really cool because you're thinking about like mortality, and then you're thinking about transformation and how
Yeah.
energy like never.
I'm not like a standard love song kind of girl. No,
No,
I'm
it's
gonna write
cool.
about death.
No, it's cool. I mean, it's like a lot of things. Like poetry is a real big part of my life, and like a lot of the work I do comes from like William Blake, the songs of innocence and experience. And now everybody knows about like because U2 went and did it. But before U2 went and did their take on William Blake, I was always getting into like Tiger and all these like songs from it, songs of innocence and experience, and they're all kind of talking about like death and power and romance, kind of from a Victorian standpoint. And I've always used like Victorian poets in my work.
Yeah.
And a lot of times they're like either like love obsessed or like death obsessed. In terms
One
of
of the
what
two.
one of the context, and so it's like it's a common theme anytime you get into like heavy type of thought process and in any kind of like art tends to go that way. That's not just being the kind of like trying to do like a top 10 hit or something, but you start looking at things that have a deeper meaning, and I think that's really cool. I think we're looking at stuff like that.
Well, thanks. Yeah. I remember like a high school science lesson where we learned about matter and energy and how you can, matter. Well, these things are never, they just change form, like especially energy. Like energy comes from the sun and it's always recycled. It's not, there's no, there's
There's
no
no
way to,
end. Yeah, no
exactly.
end.
So it's a very like scientific concept. And then it's like, well, what is it that makes us like humans? It's the energy that we use that's pulsing through our neurons. Like that's all energy. And if energy never disappears, then we never disappear. Like it's sort of, I don't know. It's like a comforting sort of thought.
Yeah, if you think about like the body electric, a lot of science fiction, like the electricity that's in your body that can't be destroyed. And if that electricity is inside your brain and it has patterns and stuff, that when your body goes away, that electricity still exists. And
Exactly.
so,
Yeah.
So that whatever that is, whether that's your soul or that's a phantasm or
Right. Like who knows if they're,
where would that go?
Right.
In the universe, it's still there.
Exactly.
Every single person that ever existed, that electricity inside of them is still here somehow.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so if you think about it that way, a lot of people think about the finality of looking at the human body, but that's not the whole thing.
Totally.
That's not everything that you are. And so if you think about it that way, that's where like the soul is, that's where those things are. So, that is a deeper discussion than what is apparent. And that's cool. In this song, I kind of feel you're touching on that. That's cool.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, that's definitely the sort of overall concept. I think you nailed it.
Yeah,
The idea, like Buddhist beliefs as well.
Oh, you are. That's cool. Yeah. Yeah, I actually practice like a Japanese form of Buddhism called
that's beautiful.
So
I'm Jewish, but I'm really the thing I'm most inspired by. I don't really consider myself like religious of anything, but the religion that I respect and try to live my life closest to, abiding by the standards of, I guess, would be Buddhism. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like the karma, the idea of like the law of attraction and all these things.
And also like just peace and love.
Yeah,
wow, I'm such
harmony.
a freaking hippie. Yeah, harmony.
Well, it's like what you put in. Like if you put in negative energy, Buddhists believe that you'll get negative energy back.
Yeah.
If it's the same kind of idea. It's like if you're good to others, it'll be good. It's the same kind of concept. If you put a lot of negative energy out there, negativity is going to come back to you. If you
Absolutely.
put out positive energy, then the positive things are going to happen. And so your karma is kind of based on what you do. And sometimes, some Buddhists believe like your karma can actually be generational, and it actually can happen based on what happened before. And so that's kind of extreme. But,
yeah.
But
I wouldn't say you can't blame the child for the sins of the parent,
Well, you shouldn't, but there's some forms of Buddhism that actually do believe that.
Oh, that's really interesting.
But it's just kind of like trying to control the concept of, people, if they're going to have good karma, they kind of have to, you can't skip. You have to kind of like keep it going.
Right. Yeah. You can.
Yeah.
One time that I did that one thing.
Yeah. So it's this idea, it's got to be consistent and even consistent within like a whole structure of a family, just because of history,
Interesting.
They had powerful people might have done bad things. Mm-hmm. And some people are able to get away with bad things if they have enough power. And so the idea in the Buddhism was like that, okay, well, even if you have the power, if you have that bad karma, it's going to be bad all the way through, all the way down the line. So you can't use that power and the energy, money to kind of act like you didn't do something, when you're doing something bad or you put bad efforts out.
Yeah.
That the good people who don't have the power, their karma is actually going to be better.
Oh, yeah.
And so that's kind of the overall concept. But
that makes sense.
Yeah, it's just, it's hard to deal with sometimes because people they have their own constructs and you don't want to force it on people.
No, anything on people for sure.
But yeah, so I think this discussion has been really cool. Getting to the last song. And what we like to tell everybody, like the way the SpareMin thing works is we record it. It goes out after we publish it. So it will be published and we will give you the links for it for free. We don't charge for it. So when this is done, we'll give you the hyperlink. There's an embed link. If you have any kind of social media that you can use an embed, we'll give you the hyperlink and we'll give you the embed link. We'll push it out to our social media. So Phantom Electric Ghost, we have a Twitter, we have a Facebook, we have, a blogger. We have a blogger page where we put every single one of these conversations and we push it out. Typically, when we do real well on these, we get about 1,500 to 2,000 replays.
That's great.
And then, it goes out to all the other social media. So, so that's what will happen. We'll go through and check it and make sure it came out good.
Okay.
And then,
hope I didn't say anything crazy. Well, that's fine. I'm crazy.
No, we don't edit the content. We edit the quality of like the sound.
Good.
So that's what we do. And we hope that, maybe 4 or 5 months from now, we try to go back and re-interview people to see where they are.
Oh, that's really cool.
So we have a bunch of people from last year that were on deck to be interviewing about their new projects and stuff that we like to follow, artists that we interview and keep the people in the loop.
Yeah.
So yeah, so we're hoping to do that. And like I said, I'll send you the information for Nell Brinkat from
Yes, thank you
Monsters
so
Tea
much.
Party. And they have a collective. It's a closed group on Facebook, but once we connect you, you'll probably get brought in, and then they'll contact you about the different things that we're doing.
Okay.
And we might be able to, bring you in on the video show if you're into that.
Oh yeah.
Later, so we could work that up.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll do that. So we'll get into the last song,
Yeah.
Screaming Seasons.
Screaming Seasons. Okay, here we go. I go on mute. I remembered. Woo!
Okay, thank you.
Just as you get used to the shape of the clouds in the sky, they start to change. And there's nothing to do, stare from your spot on the ground, and they dream. And there's no sense in running after, you're never tracking down, and soon it will be dark anyway. And when the moon comes out, she'll remind you as she dies that tomorrow is a brand new day. And I never noticed all the seasons have emotions, and each time a new one comes around, it screams out of panic, out of horror, out of joy, out of sorrow, out of knowing nothing's ever as it seems. 'Cause it seems like everything will be over as it is. So we strap ourselves into a frame of mind. But we're blinded to the tearing of the bodies we created, so we only recognize what's left behind. And I miss the house I lived in when it was the only home I'd ever known. And I miss the girl who painted pretty pictures of what she'd be when she grows. And if I go to bed now, I'll have those crazy dreams again. So I'll just lie awake here for a while. They say that nothing ever really ends, but how could we be expected to keep everything on file? And each time that it's replied, it seems all time to change the shape. So we're not sure what the initial script contains. And still time in marches on till all we really knew is gone. Another reflection, something different, new but same. And I miss the house I lived in when it was the only home I'd ever known. And I miss the girl who painted pretty pictures of what she'd be when she grows. And why are we so scared of letting go? And why are we where angels and liberty that makes us quiver taste. So could be the only way to go. Keep us alive and give us hope, knowing that it's all for a reason. Every second, every soul could be the only way to go. Keep us alive and give us hope, knowing that it's all for a reason. Could be the only way to go. Keep us alive and keep us whole. Knowing that it's all for a reason. But I miss the house I lived in when it was the only home I ever known.
So that was Screaming Seasons, and yeah, that song. So you're kind of talking about like a time period where there was some like stress or issues going on. Mm. Yeah. Oh. Mhm. No, but yeah, you have the line where you say it's hard to let go. Like we can have a hard time letting go, and I have a time to let go. Yeah, 'cause I mean, I had an experience where I had this like period where I was like working with an artist, and it was really great, and there was like this really good symmetry, and I was really in sync with this person, and then that moment went away, and it's like it didn't ever came back, and it's like I kept on holding on to it, hoping that kind of feeling would come back. But sometimes there's certain things in your life, it's like point in time. It's like it's only going to exist for that point in time, and then you kind of hope, yeah, because it's hard. And then you might hold on to it for a long time, and then you have like an expectation that maybe it'll come back. But it's like some things are like I'm never going to come back, and you just have to kind of deal with it. And how you deal with that is like kind of like how you live your life. you know, yeah, 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 yeah. That kind of your song kind of reminded me of that because I kind of went through that, and it's like sometimes I was like the last one to know that it really wasn't going to happen anymore, and I'm like, oh, I just figured that out. And then which is kind of like it gets even more painful like the day you figure it out that that's not going to happen anymore, and then you're like, oh, I didn't realize that, and then you know then you kind of like you got to let it go. It's hard to do that, and so it's cool when you hear somebody kind of captures that feeling. you know it's cool. 'Cause, yeah, it's like with your work, it's like I think with a singer songwriter, I think singer songwriters are to me are like the epitome of like the musicians I really did gravitate toward, because yeah, it's just because you get the whole picture of somebody, because sometimes when you have these very highly produced people, this seems to be kind of like an actor, like when you're watching a movie, it's like, okay, but they're kind of being like, they fit into a role, and the producer's kind of controlling it, and the director, the producers are kind of like the directors. But when you have somebody that's like has that honesty, like you get to like a Neil Young, you get to a Bob Dylan, you get to like Conor Oberst, you get people like that, and then you get people like yourself, and that are in that same tradition. You're a singer songwriter. You're showing your heart. You're putting your everything into your music, and people can appreciate that. They're looking for that, and I think you just got to get more people to realize that you're out here, and so that's what we're trying to do. Well, we're gonna try with this. Well, yeah, we're gonna try to see what we can do here, and I will send you. So, like I said, I'm going to introduce you. I already introduced you to now Bring Cat from the Monsters, but I'm going to formally like send if you're okay with it, I'm going to send her your email, and then I'm going to see if you guys can connect. If you have a Facebook, like send me that so I can link that to her, and then she'll get in touch with you. So just send me like a message, send me your Facebook ID information so I can link her, give it to her, and then we can talk about see what we can do with you getting there. It's cool, and so we'll publish this shortly tonight. Later tonight, you'll probably see it before like 10 o'clock, and yeah, we're really happy that you were the first guest for 2018. Yeah, I hope it's really good because like last year I had some issues. Yeah, I had. I just try to get 2017 behind me. Like now it's behind. All right. Well, thank you very much, and we'll send you all the information, and we hope to hear from you again, and we'll probably stay in touch. And we wish you great success in 2018 and onward. And we just, if you have other friends who are musicians that would need this, send them our way because we're booking people. We've got people booked all the way into like February and March, but we're trying to book for the whole year. So yeah, if you know anybody that would want to do this, let me know. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Great. Well, have a good night, and we'll be talking to you later. Okay. Thank you. Bye. Remember, listeners, if you like this podcast, please leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcast or Spotify or any of the other platforms, and share this interview with your friends. Thank you very much, and thank you for listening to the Family Electric Ghost podcast.